What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and show where I, Graham G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. Today we're talking the August 21st, 2023 edition of Raw Talk. Matt Camp, Megan Moran in the studio, running down the biggest headlines from Monday's show, including hyping John Cena's upcoming return announced on Monday, I think from Fox Sports, not only at the Superstar Spectacle show they're doing in India on September 8th, which I think is just a Raw exclusive show, because I was wondering, they have SmackDown that night in Boston, if it's a live show, because they've done Superstar Spectacle before. They did it during COVID in the Thunderdome, and it was a tape show, and they randomly put it up. I was like probably one of 10 people that watched it. They put it up on Peacock, and that was it, or on the WWE Network, whatever. I assume this is a live show they're doing in India, but we really haven't heard a lot about it, aside from the announcement about it about a month ago. So John Cena is going to be on that show, and on SmackDown the week prior on September 1st, probably to set up whatever match he's going to have at that event. So that'll be interesting. They mention that here. They also replay the Rollins-Nakamura segment with Nakamura, explaining what he said to Rollins last week on Raw. That amazing vignette that aired on Raw last night, which I thought was probably the best part of the entire show. I actually really liked Raw last night. I thought the crowd was great. It was a fun show overall. Gunther and Gable having a great match for the Intercontinental Championship. The best part of the show beyond Gunther and Gable was that Nakamura promo in Japanese with the subtitles. That was really well produced. It made sense. They brought up Rollins' very legitimate back injury, which he's mentioned in interviews before. I thought that was great. And they also hype up Rollins versus Nakamura, now made official for the World Heavyweight Championship at Payback next weekend. They recap the Riddle-McIntyre tag team loss to the New Day thanks to interference from the Viking Raiders. We hear from the Viking Raiders very quickly in a pre-taped, vignette that aired here on Raw Talk, where they say that they will do anything to win back the God's favor, to be back in the God's favor after losing the last couple of weeks to New Day and Riddle and McIntyre. And we find out here, maybe they announced this on Raw and I missed it, but the New Day will face the Viking Raiders next week on Raw. Again, we're getting another fucking match between New Day and the Viking Raiders. More on the rematches in a couple minutes, but because we had another rematch announced for Raw next week, and I'll go off on it momentarily, but they recap Chelsea Green and Piper Niven squashing Katana Chance and Kaden Carter in tag team action on Monday night. We hear from Green and Piper Niven real quickly afterward, and Chelsea Green says that they were meant to be tag team champions, and kind of compares them to great duos of the past, not tag teams, but like real-life duos, before Piper Niven cut her off, and that was it. So a very quick interview here from Chelsea Green. Just kind of a nothing interview here. They replay the Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus segment from Raw, which sucked. The mic work from Trish was not good. This feud has just progressively gotten worse. It really should have ended a couple of weeks ago. They're really just treading water at this point as far as what they're talking about and just the material. And Trish on the mic has just not been good at all. Becky's been fine, but it really feels like she's been missing something for a while now. The feud has just not been good. The matches have been fine. The match a couple of weeks ago on Raw, I think it was last week, right? In Canada? I think it was last week. Was not great, but the Night of Champions match was good, I thought, a couple of months ago, back in May, which feels like forever ago at this point. They did hype up Becky Lynch versus Trish for Payback, as well as Becky versus Zoe Stark in a Falls Count Anywhere match next week on Raw here on Raw Talk. They also hype up, speaking of women's action, Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez for the Women's World Championship coming up at Payback next weekend as well. They recap Gunther versus Gable for the Intercontinental Championship from Raw. Great match, won by Gable by count-out, but not the championship. They recap Miz's loss to Akira Tozawa thanks to a distraction. I mean, it was Miz's own fault. LA Knight did nothing, but LA Knight was at ringside. Miz really was kind of distracted with him, and Tozawa picked up the victory. We hear from Akira Tozawa here, who calls it the biggest win of his career. If that's the case, because Miz has barely won any fucking matches in the last 365 days, then Tozawa's had a pretty bad career. But then again, it was noted on Twitter by Sean Ross Sapp that this was Tozawa's first win on Raw since 2017. 6 years ago from when he beat Neville for the Cruiserweight Championship on Raw. That is insane to me. And it's not like he's won any matches on SmackDown. I mean, I don't know if he's ever even wrestled a single match on SmackDown. He's always been a Raw guy. He was always a 205 Live guy and sometimes on NXT. He's always been on Raw for the most part. He has not won a match on Raw in 6 years. That's fucking nuts. Unless that was just a singles match and this was his first singles win. Anyway. The Miz, beating Miz means nothing. I would say probably beating Neville, who at that point was undefeated. Beating Neville for the Cruiserweight Championship, to me, means more than beating the fucking Miz in a random TV throwaway match. But they're not going to say that because the Cruiserweight Championship doesn't exist anymore, and Neville isn't in the company anymore and hasn't been for a long time. Bronson Reed cuts off Akira Tozawa here. I honestly completely forgot about Bronson Reed. We haven't seen him in a couple of weeks. He lost to Ciampa, or rather Nakamura, on Raw 2 weeks ago. He's dressed to the nines here. He says, listen, Ciampa, you talk about, talking a big game. I am the game. I'm going to take over the game, blah, blah, blah. Let's face off one more time next week on Raw, and I can prove to you that when you're in the ring with Bronson Reed, size does matter. So we got Bronson Reed against Tommaso Ciampa next week. Listen, that should be a good match. Their first encounter a couple of weeks ago was a good match, but these rematches are out of fucking control. To a certain point, I get it. You need to do rematches to progress a rivalry. Ciampa and Reed aren't even fucking feuding. They had a very mini feud, a very brief feud, where Reed cost Ciampa that match against The Miz in that no DQ match over a month ago. They had their match. Reed won, and that was it. And then the focus kind of shifted to Nakamura and Ciampa, not really so much Reed. And then Reed had another fucking match with Nakamura, and then Nakamura won. I mean, what is with these rematches? We had another Judgment Day Owens-Zayn Rhodes match on Raw, and again, it was entertaining. But it's just fucking rematch after rematch. Zoe and Stark next week. Again. New Day versus Viking Raiders next week. Again. Ciampa versus Bronson Reed next week. Again. This is ridiculous. I mean, they really got to figure out their shit here. And I mean, listen, these matches are good. Raw has definitely been better than it has been in the past. I agree with that. But the rematches are out of control. I mean, not just with the Judgment Day stuff, that's one thing. And those matches always deliver too. Again, I'm not really complaining that much because the matches have been good. But it's like we're getting the same matches for no fucking reason. Why do the New Day have to face the Viking Raiders again when the New Day already beat the Raiders 2 weeks ago? They beat them on the show 2 weeks ago. Clean. So why do the match again? That just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, ending the show here, they recap the main event with Owens, Zayn, and Rhodes. Another rematch, beating Judgment Day in the main event of Monday's show. And they plug Edge, Becky Lynch, and Chad Gable for the bump coming up on Wednesday. No real analysis here from Matt Camp on the show or Megan Moran. I mean, they do talk about certain stuff that happened on the show, but I kind of tend to recap the analysis of them from what happened on Monday night. There wasn't really any. They just kind of spent their time recapping the show. No in-depth analysis here. This was a pretty throwaway edition of Raw Talk. One of the weaker editions I've seen in quite some time. The Chelsea Green Piper stuff was a waste. Tozawa's interview was a waste. We found out that Ciampa's facing Bronson Reed next week. Great, I guess, but it's hard to care because we've already seen it at least once. I mean, you don't only have to do matches once, but it's like there's no reason for the match to happen again. It's stupid. And then we also heard from the Viking Raiders, which was also a waste. So, I don't know. I just didn't give a shit about this show. This Raw Talk show was not great. I enjoyed Raw on Monday night. This Raw Talk show was not great at all. Thank you guys for checking out my review of this show from August 21st, 2023. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. All that support is greatly appreciated. Be sure to hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have a great one, folks. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.